Now they're looking at Jesus Christ. They're looking at George Washington. They're looking at Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not as long as I'm here.
And welcome back to WGN TV Political Report. Across the nation, calls for systemic change on racial equity have turned into action against the physical symbols celebrating leaders who put that system into place. Protesters have taken to toppling statues of various figures from Andrew Jackson to Christopher Columbus and others. Others have been defaced. Some have been removed by the same local governments that once put them up. But President Donald Trump and others have argued that keeping the statues, many depicting Confederate generals, is an important piece of the American story. A recent Quinnipiac poll showed just 44% of Americans agreed with him. Robert Shapiro is a professor at St. Xavier University in political philosophy, philosophy of law, and American constitutional thought, joining us this morning via Zoom. And Rob, good to see you. It's been a while.
Good to see you, Paul.
So look, given this growing movement to remove Confederate statues, what I want to ask you are, under what constitutional rights are people exercising that? And the reason I ask you that is because, well, if they have a right to do that, what about people that say, I want Washington and Jefferson to go? They own slaves.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the actual action taken against the statues, of course, you have to take a look at what the law provides, and several states have laws that govern this. I think the biggest problem is that there's not much of a dialogue about this. There's a legitimate question about whatever any country wants to celebrate and memorialize, the people that it will hold up, to put on statues, to think of as those people that are our heroes or whatever. There's a legitimate question about that, a legitimate debate that has been going on for some time and is now being brought to the fore as a result of some of the events that have occurred over the last few months. And that's all very sensible. But, you know, I'm a lawyer also, and I believe that it's important to follow what the law provides. If you think the law is improper, then you take a legitimate action within the law to try to change the law. And so there's, on the one hand, there's a good reason to have a very, very substantial debate on this. But on the other hand, it seems that if there is action to be taken, it should be taken in a lawful and a manner that follows proper procedures. So you've been seeing that happen in some instances, like there is the case in New York, where there was already a discussion about removing a statue of Theodore Roosevelt. Right. But the actions just taken against the statues, and in fact, the harsh words that are said back, are not the right way, I think, to conduct this debate.
So much to talk about with you. So I'm going to move on. Towards the end of the week, the Trump administration filing a brief with the Supreme Court, basically saying that the Affordable Care Act should be found completely unconstitutional. The political issues aside, under what basis, since the court has already said it is constitutional, would the court now say, yeah, the whole thing is gone?
Well, the reason that this issue is coming up again is that when the court found the Obamacare, as we tend to call it, constitutional, it did so on the basis that there was a provision in it that required people to sign up for medical insurance and penalized them if they didn't under the tax laws. And the way in which the court upheld Obamacare is to say, look, it's a legitimate exercise of the taxing authority. In 2017, Congress removed the penalty. And so now the issue is being renewed on the grounds that it can't be a lawful exercise of the tax authority. So that's the way the issue has popped up. I'm not sure that this new attempt to get rid of Obamacare is going to be any more successful. It's going to take a while to work its way through the courts in any event.
You know, we're at the end of the Supreme Court term. We'll get a couple of decisions Monday, Tuesday, because that's it. The court's term ends. It always seems every year that the court's big decisions come out right at the end. Are they going for dramatic effect? What is the reason that the big stuff comes out at the end?
Well, the big stuff comes out at the end because it requires the most care and consideration, and often there are divided votes on the court. So there is a process that the court goes through where a majority opinion will be written, then a dissent will be written, then the majority opinion might be changed as a result of the dissent. It just takes more time. So they tend to leave these really, really important cases. There are a couple of really big ones. There's the so-called faithless elector decision. There's also a very important abortion decision coming out of Louisiana. that they tend to leave it to the end to make certain that they proceed with all due care and come up with something that is really something that people can understand and decides the matter fully.
You know, President Trump has now appointed essentially 200 judges during his tenure, a hugely large number. Mitch McConnell says there are no more vacancies on the appellate level. So for people that say, okay, that's nice, we have no vacancies, what does it mean that over 200 judges or so are Trump appointees in the system?
Well, this is a much more substantial number than any president has done in any comparable period of time. And as you may know, these judges were vetted by some conservative groups. And so I think there's a hope or a belief, perhaps, by the Trump administration that these judges will tend to side more with the Trump administration or with conservative principles. You know, it's an interesting thing. There were two people appointed to the Supreme Court during Trump's administration, and one of them was the author of an opinion that the Trump administration really didn't like.
Yeah.
And I think what that shows is that most people, when they get on the court, tend to follow a very careful process that judges tend to follow to make certain that they act fairly, that they construe the statutes, and they determine the thing on the merits. So even if there is a right-leaning character to these judges, and it makes more of a difference at the appellate court level than it does at the district court level, even if there is a kind of tendency of that way, I think most judges are going to try to do the right thing. And so I'm not sure that this process is going to be all that successful. And of course, at some point, there'll be a different administration that will have a different approach where things will tend to equal out.
All right, Professor Robert Shapiro from St. Xavier University. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul.
All right. Still to come.